Woman Jika, everyone. Woman Jika meaning welcome. My name is Auntie Julianne, and I'm an out of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people. And in recognition of doing my welcome to country, I'd like to pay my respects to my elders, past, present, future, and any elders that were here today. And I would also like to welcome you all here today. The Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung tribe consists of 3 families, the Nevins, the Terricks, and the Wandans, and I'm part of the Nevin family. The 3 families all descend from one woman called Annie Barratt, which makes us one big family. Annie Barratt is the youngest sister of William Barratt, a pioneer for Aboriginal people in the 19th century, fighting for equality and land rights. I'm here today to welcome you all to the land of my ancestors. We call the land within our tribal boundaries our country. The Kulin Nation, Kulin meaning man, is made up of 5 groups. They are the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung, Boonwurrung, Tanarong, Watharong and Dja-dja-wurrung. And to give you an outline of the Wurundjeri country and the area we cover. Wurundjeri country extends from north to the Great Dividing Range, east to Mount Baw Baw, south to the Moolalic Creek and west to the Werribee River. We cover a diverse range of land from the mountains to the beach and everything in between. Many thousands of years ago, if an Aboriginal person from another tribe wanted to cross our boundary, they would have to sit at the boundary and wait for the Narragadah, which is the headman, or an elder to come past to give permission to cross. Traditional Aboriginal culture was highly territorial, and visitors risked a violent reprisal for crossing a tribal or clan boundary without this permission, and this is how a welcome to country originated in our culture. Traditionally, being welcomed onto country meant you respected Bunjil's law. Bunjil, the wedge-tailed eagle, is our creator, and Wah the crow is our protector. And as long as you looked after the country, you had access to our waterways and our land resources. And when you enter our country, we ask that you respect our resources, our fauna, flora and water, as they are very special to us. And when you are ready to leave, we ask that you leave it the way you found it.
We have lots of council services that support our community. We support families with children, including health services for children and mums, vaccinations, playgroups, childcare, and kinder. We support young people in our community. Through events and activities, we have services that can support people with disability, older people, and carers and family of people with disability and older people. Our libraries support everyone in our community, help people learn new things, and are free to join. We support our community to have fun and be active through events and activities, sport, and recreation areas. We help look after our places and spaces, the environment, and local businesses. We have laws to keep people safe, to make sure buildings are safe, to make sure roads and footpaths are safe, to make sure our places and spaces are safe. We make sure everyone follows the law to keep our community safe and happy. Moonee Valley. It's a great place to live, work, and visit.
Woman Jika, everyone. Woman Jika meaning welcome. My name is Auntie Julianne, and I'm an elder of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people. And in recognition of doing my welcome to country, I'd like to pay my respects to my elders, past, present, future, and any elders that were here today. And I would also like to welcome you all here today. The Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung tribe consists of 3 families, the Nevins, the Terricks, and the Wandans, and I'm part of the Nevin family. The 3 families all descend from one woman called Annie Barratt, which makes us one big family. Annie Barratt is the youngest sister of William Barratt, a pioneer for Aboriginal people in the 19th century, fighting for equality and land rights. I'm here today to welcome you all to the land of my ancestors. We call the land within our tribal boundaries our country. The Kulin Nation, Kulin meaning man, is made up of 5 groups. They are the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung, Boonwurrung, Tanarong, Watharong and Dja-dja-wurrung. And to give you an outline of the Wurundjeri country and the area we cover. Wurundjeri country extends from north to the Great Dividing Range, east to Mount Baw Baw, south to the Morley Creek and west to the Werribee River. We cover a diverse range of land from the mountains to the beach and everything in between. Many thousands of years ago, if an Aboriginal person from another tribe wanted to cross our boundary, They would have to sit at the boundary and wait for the Narragator, which is the headman, or an elder to come past to give permission to cross. Traditional Aboriginal culture was highly territorial, and visitors risked a violent reprisal for crossing a tribal or clan boundary without this permission, and this is how a welcome to country originated in our culture. Traditionally, being welcomed onto country meant you respected Bunjil's law. Bunjil, the wedge-tailed eagle, is our creator, and Wah the crow is our protector. And as long as you looked after the country, you had access to our waterways and our land resources. And when you enter our country, we ask that you respect our resources, our fauna, flora and water, as they are very special to us. And when you are ready to leave, we ask that you leave it the way you found it.
We have lots of council services that support our community. We support families with children, including health services for children and mums, vaccinations, playgroups, childcare, and kinder. We support young people in our community. Through events and activities, we have services that can support people with disability, older people, and carers and family of people with disability and older people. Our libraries support everyone in our community, help people learn new things, and are free to join. We support our community to have fun and be active through events and activities, sport, and recreation areas. We help look after our places and spaces, the environment, and local businesses. We have laws to keep people safe, to make sure buildings are safe, to make sure roads and footpaths are safe, to make sure our places and spaces are safe. We make sure everyone follows the law to keep our community safe and happy. Moonee Valley. It's a great place to live, work, and visit.
Woman Jika, everyone. Woman Jika meaning welcome. My name is Auntie Julianne, and I'm an out of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people. And in recognition of doing my welcome to country, I'd like to pay my respects to my elders, past, present, future, and any elders that were here today. And I would also like to welcome you all here today. The Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung tribe consists of 3 families, the Nevins, the Terricks, and the Wandans, and I'm part of the Nevin family. The 3 families all descend from one woman called Annie Barratt, which makes us one big family. Annie Barratt is the youngest sister of William Barratt, a pioneer for Aboriginal people in the 19th century, fighting for equality and land rights. I'm here today to welcome you all to the land of my ancestors. We call the land within our tribal boundaries our country. The Kulin Nation, Kulin meaning man, is made up of 5 groups. They are the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung, Boonwurrung, Tanarong, Watharong and Dja-dja-wurrung. And to give you an outline of the Wurundjeri country and the area we cover. Wurundjeri country extends from north to the Great Dividing Range, east to Mount Baw Baw, south to the Moolalic Creek and west to the Werribee River. We cover a diverse range of land from the mountains to the beach and everything in between. Many thousands of years ago, if an Aboriginal person from another tribe wanted to cross our boundary, they would have to sit at the boundary and wait for the Narragator, which is the headman, or an elder to come past to give permission to cross. Traditional Aboriginal culture was highly territorial, and visitors risked a violent reprisal for crossing a tribal or clan boundary without this permission, and this is how a welcome to country originated in our culture. Traditionally, being welcomed onto country meant you respected Bunjil's law. Bunjil, the wedge-tailed eagle, is our creator. and Wah the Crow is our protector. And as long as you looked after the country, you had access to our waterways and our land resources. And when you enter our country, we ask that you respect our resources, our fauna, flora and water, as they are very special to us. And when you are ready to leave, we ask that you leave it the way you found it.
Welcome everyone to the Council meeting on the 25th of February 2025, which I now declare open at 6:35pm. I'd like to warmly welcome members of the public who have joined us tonight, as well as those watching online. As well as being live streamed, the video recording of this meeting will also be available on our website, so attendees in the gallery are advised that your presence may be recorded. I also ask that mobile phones be switched off to silent mode during the meeting. A reminder as well to the public in the gallery that as per Governance Rule 75.1, personal video and audio recordings are not allowed. On behalf of Moonee Valley City Council, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which Moonee Valley is located, the Wurundjeri Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respect to their spirits, ancestors, community members and elders, past, present and emerging. We also extend this respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. We now move to item 2 on the agenda, apologies and leave of absence. All councillors are in attendance, with Councillor Paula Theocrides online, and I don't believe there are any other apologies or leave of absence requests. We now move to item 3 on the agenda, confirmation of minutes. Councillors, can I please have a mover and a seconder that the minutes from the council meeting held on Tuesday, the 28th of January 2025 be confirmed? Moved, Councillor Hamish Jones, seconded Councillor Sypek. Councillor Jones, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Sypek? No. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Theocrides, could you please note your vote? Thank you, Councillor Theocrides, and that motion is declared carried unanimously. The next item on the agenda is declarations of conflict of interest. Does any councillor wish to flag a conflict of interest on any item on the agenda this evening? No, thank you. The next item on the agenda is presentations. I have a few presentations myself, so I'll present those and then ask other councillors if there are any presentations. So my first presentation, last week I had the great pleasure of visiting Rosehill Secondary College in Niddrie to meet the Year 10 cohort who are studying civics and citizenship. It was such a wonderful opportunity to meet with students to talk about the impact they can have in the community and how they can help to push for change and make a difference in the community during this stage of their life. I want to acknowledge and thank Billy Liberides and his teacher team at Rosehill Secondary College. The visit was an absolute highlight. My next presentation is for a book launch that I attended last week for a book called No One Told Me by local high school teacher Christina Georgiadis. Christina has been a Moonee Valley resident for 17 years, currently raising her two boys, Timothy and George, here in Moonee Valley. Her self-published book, No One Told Me, is the deeply personal story of Christina and the difficulties she encountered with stillbirths, infertility, grief, depression, including 35 operations over 20 years. It's a story of determination and courage when tragedy hits. It's the book Christina had wished was available when she was experiencing all of her challenges. And as Christina says, I believe that it not only takes a village to raise children, it takes a village to get through this life. So congratulations, Christina. It's not easy self-publishing a book, but your resilience and persistence to share your brave story is truly inspiring, and I do hope this book helps others facing similar challenges to not feel alone. No One Told Me can be purchased online at thebookadvisor.com.au. Thank you. And for my last presentation this afternoon, councillors were invited to attend the Essendon Historical Society to have a tour of the old Essendon Courthouse to see the recently launched exhibition Anything Goes, which is a celebration of the 1920s in Moonee Valley. The Moonee Valley community is invited to visit the Essendon Historical Society every Sunday between 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. And they are also giving away these 2025 calendars for free. So get down to the Essendon Historical Society at the courthouse on a Sunday between 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. Thank you for indulging me. I will now ask any councillors if there are any other presentations. Before we go to Councillor Cosgrove, I just want to say welcome to Councillor Paula Theocrides, who is now here in person. Thank you. Councillor Cosgrove.
Thanks, Mayor. I have three quick presentations. Firstly, on February the 13th, I met down at the Aberfeldy Men's Shed with Minister Ros Spence and Minister Ben Carroll, where there was $15,000 was announced for the Aberfeldy Men's Shed to purchase some equipment and install a shade sail, which will allow them to increase their capacity, so that was great. Last week we had the pleasure of touring the Montgomery Park Kindergarten with a few fellow councillors. It was a new facility, a modular buildings that were built with council's Building Blocks Partnership Program from the Victorian Government. It's the first one off the ranks for us, and it was fantastic, and it was really an amazing facility, and will allow the increased enrolments at that kindergarten, and next stop is Lincolnville Kinder, I think. In a few we're upgrading, so that was wonderful. And then lastly, I wanted to congratulate a young Moonee Valley resident, Isabella Page, who last Monday received her King Scout Award at the Moonee Pond Scout Hall. The King Scout Award is the highest award you can earn in the Venturer section. It demonstrates a huge amount of dedication, facing up to challenges, and personal growth and reflection in the recipient. So my deep congratulations to Isabella, and thanks to her family and her scouting family who supported her in that achievement. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Any other presentations? Councillor Isa?
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to talk about the Incinerator Gallery's 2025 exhibition program that celebrated Moonee Valley City Council's commitment to our LGBTIQA+ community through queer stories. The opening was attended by Minister Ben Carroll and the Midsummer CEO Karen Bryant. The opening also saw the opening of the exhibition was also coinciding with the opening of our new Incinerator Gallery lift, which was funded in part by $200,000 from the Department of Families, Fairness and Housing, and now creates a more accessible space for the community. I also just wanted to comment on the attendance of a number of councillors. I think Councillor Jones, Councillor Cosgrove, Councillor Theocharides, Councillor Phil Byrne and myself at the Midsummer Pride March on the Saturday following. And I just can't think of the date, but I know that it was Councillor Phil Byrne's birthday. I think it was the 2nd of February. That was a very hot day, the Midsummer Pride March, and another very hot day was last Saturday, which was our annual Moonee Valley Festival, and many thanks to all of the community members who did come out to the festival despite the searing heat. At one stage I do wonder whether there were more people in the Queen's Park pool, which was open free for the day, than actually at the festival adjacent to the pool. It was certainly very hot, and thanks so much to all of the stall holders and participants in events who endured the heat to participate in our Moonee Valley Festival.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Any other presentations? Thank you, Councillor Phil Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor. Just the one presentation from me this evening. On Friday, I had the privilege of attending the 40th birthday celebrations for the Wingate Community Centre in Ascot Vale. I just wanted to thank everyone who took the time to chat around the achievements of that centre, but also the current and future challenges that the centre faces. I think it's fair to say Wingate's an integral element of the Ascot Vale community, in particular the public housing estate. For those that aren't aware, the centre supports employment, training and education, financial counselling, food relief, legal support, disability support, migrant settlement support and childcare. So a big happy birthday. Thank you for all the hard work that you do, and we certainly look forward to working with you in many years to come. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Any other presentations? Councillor Hamish Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. Yourself and I were lucky enough to attend the Community Advisory Panel last Sunday afternoon. They've completed and prepared 16 priority outcomes to fulfil the draft community vision, which will be presented to all councillors at a public forum in March.
They will. Thank you, Councillor Jones. Any other presentations? Councillor Theocharides.
Thank you, Mayor Adams. Yes, I'd like to firstly speak about some Clock Tower events, or the events at the Clock Tower that we've had since our last meeting. So we've featured 2 incredible shows as part of our theatre season, or as part of the Clock Tower theatre season. Effie by Mary Custis opened the season with her show Up Yourselfness, which I was fortunate, I think, with Councillor Hamish Jones and Mayor Ava Adams to see, which was a fantastic event. It was in all her style, a great comedic performance, but also a really great message, underlying message, which was fantastic. And we also saw the Soweto Gospel Choir, which returned for their performance as well. And of course, the community favourite Morning Music has returned. So it's a great start to the season at the Clock Tower, and if you haven't checked out the shows for the rest of the year, I strongly encourage everyone to do so, as we have some great performances coming. The second presentation that I'd like to make is just with an event that myself and a couple of my fellow councillors attended. So on Sunday the 9th of February, together with Minister Ben Carroll and my fellow councillors, Councillor John Sypek and Councillor Samantha Byrne, we attended the Avondale Heights Junior Registration Day. And so on behalf of myself, my fellow councillor colleagues and the Minister, we'd just like to thank the Avondale Heights Football Club for the warm welcome and the invitation to attend that event. It was filled with free barbecue, inflatables and popcorn for the kids, and I know by the look on all the kids' faces, they absolutely loved having a go at dunking their coach in water. So it was great to see everyone having a great time there. But I just wanted to also just acknowledge Bruno Del Rey, Darren Sheridan, Adrian Miziano, Dominic Miziano and Willem Spann, and of course the incredible club volunteers who all of them give so much of their time, and their dedication is truly inspiring. They've built such a wonderful community there, and I wanted to ensure that I mention them tonight, because the strong sense of spirit of the club at the club is such a valuable asset to our Avondale Heights neighbourhood. So I just wanted to mention that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other presentations? No, I've got one more. As the appointment of the municipal monitors will finish by the end of this month, tonight will be the last council meeting for the monitors. On behalf of council, I would like to thank Ms. Prue Digby and Mr. Philip Carruthers for your guidance and assistance to the last council and the newly elected council in improving council's governance practice in the past 12 to 13 months. Council is looking forward to receiving the final report from the monitors. Thank you. Councillors, we now need to amend the council meeting agenda. Councillors, can I have a mover and a seconder that council resolves to include item 6, petitions and joint letters, item 7, public question time, and item 8, reports from delegates to tonight's council meeting agenda, as they were omitted due to an administrative error. Moved Councillor Samantha Byrne, seconded Councillor Fran Cosgrove. Councillor Byrne, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Cosgrove? Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. The next item on the agenda is petitions and joint letters. I believe we have received 2 petitions. One is regarding parking outside the Telstra building, and the other is for more facilities for Bradshaw Street Reserve. Both are not compliant with the governance rules, as they do not include signatories' addresses or email addresses. Before I go any further, does any councillor have a conflict of interest to declare on any of these items, these matters? No? Can I please have a mover and a seconder that council resolves to temporarily suspend the petition and joint letter provisions at Governance Rule 62.3 to allow the petitions parking outside Telstra building and more facilities for Bradshaw Street Reserve to be tabled? Moved Councillor Samantha Byrne, seconded Councillor Cosgrove. Councillor Byrne, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just that I'm happy to deviate away from the governance rules to ensure that we can accept the petition.
Thank you. Councillor Cosgrove, would you like to speak to the motion? Any other councillor like to speak? No? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Please present the petition on parking outside the Telstra building.
Thank you, Mayor. Council has received a petition signed by 10 traders and 85 customers requesting a change to the unrestricted parking outside the Telstra building located at the corner of Aberdeen Street and Buckley Street. They would prefer 2 to 3 hour parking restrictions during business hours to allow customers to stop and use their businesses while still providing space for local residents to park overnight.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. In accordance with Governance Rule 62.4, I refer the petition to the CEO for consideration. And the next petition, Councillor Barnes, please present the petition regarding more facilities for Bradshaw Street Reserve.
Thank you, Mayor. Council has received a hybrid petition with 62 signatures via change.org, bracket open, approximately 22 from Moonee Valley, end of bracket, and 82 signatures on paper from local residents. The petition requests upgraded facilities, including but not limited to a basketball half-court for Bradshaw Street Reserve Park, as previously outlined in the draft master plan. This upgrade is to provide invaluable space for youth and families to enjoy recreational basketball in Essendon, and this is the petition.
Yep, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. In accordance with Governance Rule 62.4, I refer the petition to the CEO for consideration. Councillors, do we have any other petitions or joint letters? No. We have now come to public question time, and we have received 4 questions from 2 residents this evening. The first 2 questions are from Chris Angus, who is not joining us this evening. So on behalf of Chris, his first question reads, in March 2024, I asked when the council would release its report into the options and feasibility of time-based designated off-leash dog park. The report was agreed to by unanimous motion by councillors on the 10th of October 2023. In response, the CEO stated that the report would be completed in the 2023-24 financial year. However, it has now been 16 months since the notice of motion was first agreed to and nearly a full year since the report was originally meant to be released. Can the council provide specific reasons as to why this report is taking so long to complete and advise what steps are being taken to ensure that the report will be released to the public as soon as possible? Thank you, Chris. I refer to the CEO, Helen Sway, to respond.
Thank you, Chris. Through the Mayor, officers have considered a number of council resolutions relating to dog parks over the past few years and responded in a holistic way by delivering various initiatives, including but not limited to upgrading off-leash facilities at Cliff Whitworth Reserve, reviewing the feasibility of greyhound off-leash dog parks across the municipality, the planned upgrading of facilities at the off-leash area at Travancore Park, and the opening of a trial off-leash dog park in Burn Street, Moonee Ponds. A report is being prepared for presentation at the April 2025 council meeting, which will respond to the outstanding notice of motion regarding dog parks, including outlining the requirements for time-based off-leash dog parks and providing outcomes of the recent dog park trial. I apologise for the delay in delivering the report and thank you for your patience and questions. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. On behalf of Chris, his second question reads, the 2017 Buckley Park Master Plan proposed an off-leash dog area on the northern oval of the park. However, despite the master plan being approved almost a decade ago, and despite the council repeatedly acknowledging the social and health benefits of dog ownership and infrastructure, no off-leash area has been introduced. This is despite multiple requests in recent years from residents for this project to be prioritised. Why is no action being taken after this extended time period? Thank you, Chris. I refer to the CEO, Helen Sway, to respond.
Thank you, Chris. Through the Mayor, the Buckley Park Master Plan provides a long-term strategic vision for how Buckley Park could look in the future. Master plans are not budget commitments in themselves. Council's annual budgeting process considers all master plans across municipality, assesses many competing funding requests, and confirms the objects to be delivered each year. There is a limit to what Council can deliver while remaining financially sustainable. Council's capital works planning for Buckley Park is currently focused on the design of the car park and circuit path improvements, new stormwater harvesting scheme, and associated landscaping and play space impacts. A dog off-leash trial for Buckley Park may be considered in future years. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. The next two questions are from Todd McHardy, who is in attendance in the gallery. Todd's first question has been disallowed under Governance Rule 61.8.1 as it relates to a matter outside the duties, functions and powers of Council. And Todd's second question has been disallowed under Governance Rule 61.8.3 as it deals with the subject matter already answered. The next item on the agenda is report from delegates. Councillors, do we have any reports as delegates? Councillor Phil Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got two, if you're happy if I just go 1-2 with those. So the first one, Mayor, is on the 5th of February, I represented Moonee Valley at the Melbourne Transport Forum. First meeting for newly elected council, so it was very procedural through intros, welcomes, appointment of executives, and some very early work on the strategic action plan. But for those who might be interested, the chair of this committee is Councillor Bernadette Thomas from City of Maribyrnong. But what I did want to highlight was the very good presentation that we had from Miss Tricia Maloney, who's the Chief Disability Advocate for Public Transport Victoria. She's done a Churchill Fellowship on key barriers facing people with disability within 5 countries. And obviously some of this will be relevant to our work as it interfaces a lot with public transport and active transport. Certainly that in all of the jurisdictions, UK, I think it was UK, USA, Canada, a couple of others, I'll have those in the minutes, but they're all working towards universal access for everyone. The key takeaways were that, yeah, they're all working in that direction. There's very many different ways to ensure that transport systems are inclusive. Information is essential as well, in particular with greater emphasis on wayfinding to also be in key disability discussions as well. And an interesting takeaway that scooters and food delivery bikes in all of those jurisdictions were viewed as a problem and a nuisance as well. So that was the Melbourne Transport Forum. Just turning to the next delegate report, myself and Councillor Isa represent Moonee Valley on the Melbourne Royal Community Consultation Group. So again, some early procedural matters in this meeting, but the Showgrounds and the VRC provided a recap of previous events in late 2024, as also their predictions for the and planning for the upcoming events as well. And this was a pretty important opportunity for us to raise with the committee the nature and type of many of the community concerns and feedback that we're getting from a lot of the events at the Showgrounds and the Flemington Racecourse as well. And so a really good opportunity for us to keep advocating for those residents. And interesting to note that certainly none of the feedback that I've received has in any way suggesting all of the events and concerts pack up and go away. It's always the things around the edges, so it's a continual cycle of improvement needed. And certainly indeed post-meeting following the Laneway festival as well, we also got some feedback, both Councillor Oz and myself, from residents around traffic, some antisocial behaviour and noise as well. So we can feed that back through the next meeting as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Philburn. Do any other councillors wish to report back? No, if not, we'll now move on to item 9, reports. The first report is item 9.1, MV/403/2024 at 39 Warner Street, Essendon. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Cosgrove.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with some amendments, please. I'll read the amended sections.
Thank you.
Sorry, it's a bit long. So that Council advises the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal and other parties to the application that if Council were in a position to decide on the application, that the decision would have been to issue a notice of decision to grant a permit in relation to planning permit application number MV/403/2024 at 39 Warner Street, Essendon, lots 1 and 2 on Title Plan 427865S for the construction of 6 dwellings with a basement level within an environmental significance overlay Schedule 2 and a special building overlay area in accordance with the conditions in Attachment 1, amended as follows. So, endorsement condition 1 with an additional point A that states the southern second floor elevation be modified to comply with clause 55.04-1, standard B17, side and rear setbacks of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme. Point B, any internal changes with no decrease to any other setbacks as a result of condition 1A. And an additional point G in the endorsement conditions that states a notation on the plans stating that all construction materials and associated storage must take place within the title boundaries of the site. And for condition 6 to state a minimum of 30 days prior to any building or works commencing, a construction and site management plan must be submitted to and be approved by the responsible authority. The CSMP must address the following: providing for effective construction management and ensuring the protection of sensitive parklands, trees and waterways. A, all the types of construction activity proposed to occur on site. B, the storage of building materials completely within the title boundaries of the site. C, the tree and vegetation protection methods. And D, environmental management methods to be used. And am I up to amended? Have I read 33?
No, not yet.
Okay, sorry, thank you. Amended condition for 33 to read, prior to the commencement of the development, including any demolition works, the following street tree / nature strip / woodlands park protection measures must be undertaken. Point C, no building materials are to be stacked and or dumped on any nature strip and or woodlands park during the construction. Yes, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Philburn. Councillor Cosgrove, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, so this is for a proposed development on Warner Street, which backs onto Woodlands Park. It's for 6 units, 3 stories high. They'll be luxury apartments, I understand, and they look lovely. The changes to well, so it's a bit unusual that this is coming to council at this time because it's actually already been referred to VCAT, and we'll be going to a compulsory meeting there in March. This is to notify VCAT that had we had the opportunity to make the decision, it would have been to approve the plans with those conditions. And the changes that we've made to the officer's recommendation are firstly in relation to an architectural feature that was non-structural, that was raised last week at our planning consultation meeting between the applicant and objectors, that I understand the applicants have considered removing based on feedback, and that's to make sure that it doesn't, to make sure that the setbacks of the building are in line with our planning scheme, to reduce the impact on the residents to the southern side. The other changes to the endorsement conditions are just about making sure that all of the construction that happens on that site is respectful and responsive to the fact that Woodlands Park is a really significant sensitive natural area in Moonee Valley, and to ensure that their building activities don't interfere with that or negatively impact the park for other users. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Councillor Philburn, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Would any other councillor like to speak? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. The next report is item 9.2, to award the variation to contract number 203173 for panel contract for minor civil works. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Isa?
I'll move the officer's recommendation. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Isa. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cosgrove? Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. Look, this is a variation on a contract that we put in place a couple of years ago, and it is involving some really large sums, and it did cause some of us to question that, to make sure that we were absolutely understanding what officers were recommending here, and that this is absolutely the best way forward in terms of maximising cost effectiveness and efficiencies, and I guess expediting our capital works program in the best way. And I want to thank the officers for providing fulsome responses to all of our questions to make sure that we feel comfortable with a variation of, as I say, a considerably high figure. The way that this, or what this panel provides for council is some certainty around the cost for some of our regular, they're called minor civil works, but they're actually pretty major for our municipality. It's roads, drainage, it's pretty much the roads, rates and rubbish contracts around Moonee Valley are fairly essential. The shared paths, the footpaths, a significant quantum of our capital works are these types of works, hence the large figures. And so what this panel arrangement provides for council is some certainty around the costs and certainty around the availability of various contractors, so that we can roll out the asset renewal that we need to do to make sure that our drainage, footpaths, etc. are up to the standard and expectation of our community. So the risks are the risks are lower than the benefits for this particular process that we're undertaking here, and it provides us with more financial certainty to enlist a panel and have them available should we wish to depart from the panel arrangements. That's also provided for within within the contracts that we have in place. So all of those I's have been dotted and T's crossed on this one, and I'm comfortable with putting forward this motion. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Isa. Councillor Cosgrove, would you like to speak to the motion? No. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Samantha Byrne.
Yeah, thanks. I will, and I'll support the officer's recommendation. I think it's probably worth putting out there the numbers. So this is to council approves the contract variation of $26 million, excluding GST, and adjusts the total estimated contract value to $45 million, excluding GST. But I'm going to cover that with that we manage 411 kilometres of local roads, 486 kilometres of drainage pipes, 23,000 drainage pits, and 885 kilometres of pathways across the municipality. And these assets are highly valued by the community who live, work and play in the municipality. And in a recent community satisfaction survey, the community scored council at 60 out of 100 for the satisfaction of sealed road network, well above the statewide average of 45 out of 100. So I think there's a fair thing to say that rates, roads and rubbish is quite important to the people of Moonee Valley, and we seem to be doing a decent job at it.
Thank you, Councillor Samantha Byrne. Any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Hamish Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to, I will also be supporting the officer's recommendation. I just wanted to reiterate that this is not because things have necessarily got more expenditure. This increased, more expensive. This increased expenditure is because we're delivering more of our capital works program, not because of a variation in the rates we're being charged by contractors. And I think that's important that residents are made aware as we're making this decision. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No, if not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. The next report is item 9.3, Capital Works Performance Report, December 2024 quarter. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Cosgrove?
I'll move the officer's recommendation, thank you.
And a seconder? Councillor Jones? Councillor Cosgrove, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. This is an update on our capital works performance for this financial year. Since we last looked at this, I think it might have come to us in December. One of the additions was that the Montgomery Park Kindergarten that I mentioned earlier that we all got to go to, and it's part of a large series of capital works that we're hoping to deliver this year. We're also noting the variation, which so it's $1.5 million roughly variation from the original program, which was to do with grants we've received, such as the building blocks grants for the kindergartens, and some additional funds that were moved within the budget. So we're not adding any more money. It's just accounting for grants and moving some to different projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Councillor Jones, would you like to speak to the motion? Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Samantha Byrne?
Sure, I'd like to speak on the capital works. I might keep it relatively close to my ward. And just for those following along at home, this is for quarter 2, so between October and December. So it might sound a little bit funny because these have been finished a while ago. But I will go off the report and might add a little bit in. But really excitingly, in Steel Creek Ward, we had the some of the upgrades to Para Road in Airport West, and I do want to thank all of the residents. That was quite a painful, long project, but so much, very much needed, so it's glad that that one's finally done. We also had the fantastic Keeler Road landscape improvements. We love supporting our local businesses, and that has been a great success. We've also completed works at Spring Gully Reserve Playground under the Play Space Renewal Program. And what people would be starting to see now is the demolition of the cricket nets at Edsel Street. which is also a very exciting project. One slightly outside of my ward, but I think is very important and something that people are very excited about, is the Rosehill Park playground improvements. The slides went in last week, and no, Councillor Sypek, that's not actually your ward either. So, the slides went in last week, and if you haven't done a drive down Rochelle Road to see how amazing this wonderful regional park is, I strongly recommend you do it. And it's saying that we're hoping expected completion by May 2025. So overall, really exciting things that have happened in the Capital Works land of Moonee Valley. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Sypek?
Yes, I'd also like to reiterate Rosehill Park is coming along quite nicely. I walk past there every day, and it's funny noticing you see a couple of children hanging on the cyclone fence saying, "Mum, when can we get in?" And I've got to walk past and sort of can't give them a date because I don't know the exact date. But as Councillor Byrne said, it should be opening around May sometime. So I look forward to seeing children returning to the playground at Rosehill Park.
Thanks, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Isa?
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Byrne, for mentioning some of the projects that have been completed, because I was going to mention a couple as well. But I actually think it might be... there is actually a list of all of the works, rather than being sort of ward picking off or being ward specific. There is actually a list of all of the completed works in the attachment on page 24 onwards, and it goes for 2 pages. So there's quite a considerable list there of projects that officers have been working to complete. I was just going to note about some of those projects, though many of them are projects that we've had to carry over from the previous year, and it's something that I mention often in the chamber, because it's something I guess that I'm still a little bit troubled by, is that we still have this lag and catch-up effect of about $10–11 million worth of capital works each budget that we've still had to catch up. And so I really appreciate the pressure sometimes that we're putting our officers under in this capital works program, and hope that in the budget, upcoming budget and the budgets over the next few years, we can continually reduce that need to carry forward sort of a quarter or so of our capital works projects, so that we are a bit more on track there. But there's a great list of things that we've completed halfway through our financial year, and there are some across the whole municipality. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Before we move on to the next report, I've been alerted that members of the public in the gallery have taken photos and posted on social media. This is against Council's Governance Rule 75.1, and please stop taking photos. If you continue this, I will take necessary actions. Thank you. The next report is item 9.4, Quarterly Financial Performance Report and Declaration of Council Expenses. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
Happy to move the officer's report.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Do I have a
recommendation? I'm sorry.
Sure. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cosgrove. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the motion?
Look, I'll just note that there have been some changes for quarter 1 and quarter 2. Some of those changes, though, have been grants received for some of our capital works and kindergarten early years programs. So they have changed the annual forecast of the... am I looking at the wrong report, though? I'm looking at the wrong report. Sorry, Mayor, I was thrown by the comment just made, so just bear with me. The financial look, I'll just move the officer's report. Sorry, I was just really thrown by the comment that you just made, so I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, no worries. Do I have a seconder? Oh, sorry, that was Councillor Cosgrove. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I will quickly. So the financial performance report for the second quarter, October to December. I guess to thank the officers who have put it together. Things are looking good. One thing of note in there that we've discussed as a councillor group previously as well is that we have had an increase in Moonee Valley of residents who have or ratepayers who have requested payment plans for their rates, which everyone is entitled to do, and there's no interest charged on payment arrangements if you're struggling, because cost of living is a big issue at the moment, obviously, for everyone, and council rates can be a fair whack. So, if any residents were concerned about rates instalments, to get in touch with us. But that we are also cognizant. So it's been an increase of around 80 residents since this time last year, or since December last year, just that we've got an eye on that. And I think we're also waiting on a report about what we might be able to do to further support people from council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Would any other councillor like to speak on the item? Councillor Jones?
I just wanted to touch upon something that was just mentioned by Councillor Cosgrove as well, particularly the rates receivable figure that we have in the municipality, and I think it's important that we are mindful of that and mindful of the cost of living pressures with all of the decisions we make now and going forward.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Samantha Byrne?
Sure. Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove, for bringing that up. It was definitely something that I wanted to speak to about, and obviously Councillor Jones as well. Just to add some numbers in, at the end of the 23-24 financial year, rate debtors were 17.9 million, which reflected an increase of 34.6% on 22-23. So since the start of the financial year, there's been 991 people, whereas if you compared that to December 2023, it was 905, which I think is where you got your number from. So there are people that have applied for payment arrangements, and those numbers are increasing, and I'm glad we're looking at trying to do something about that. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Samantha Byrne. Any other councillor like to speak? No, if not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. The next report is item 9.5, adoption of the Councillor Occupational Health and Safety Policy. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor, and I would like to move the officer's recommendation, and I'm sure about the motion I'm moving this time.
Thanks, Councillor Isa. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sypek. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I would. Look, this is a really important report that has come to us tonight. So thank you, officers, for bringing this to us. This sets out a policy for occupational health and safety for councillors, which we haven't had before, and it's something that has been missed, I think, over the past term. So I'm really grateful that we've now putting this in place. It's noted in the purpose of this document that occupational health and safety is one of the most important objectives. Maintaining occupational health and safety is one of the most important objectives. And this is a really serious document that sets out the role that we have in taking reasonable care of our own health and safety, but also the health and safety of our colleagues, and supporting any of the reasonable adjustments that need to be made to support the health and wellbeing and safety of our colleagues. The policy sets out that we as councillors need to do required training, we need to comply with the procedures, participate when required in the resolution of safety issues, consider the health and safety implications of our decisions, and as I said before, respect and support reasonable accommodations provided to councillors. It then sets out incident and hazard reporting procedures, and then some really important sections that as I say, we've perhaps really lacked some shared understanding and policy in these areas. One of those is for procedures for acute health matters at council meetings. And I'll just speak to that really quickly, because obviously that's something that's impacted me personally, and I have been very grateful for colleagues managing the situations as that arises, and I'm very glad that we now have some policies that are that we can all refer to if people have particular questions about what we need to do to look after each other in those sorts of situations. Another policy that this sets out, or procedures, that this sets out, are the procedures for disorderly conduct at council meetings. We've been fortunate at Moonee Valley, we haven't had too many disorderly council meetings, but they happen from time to time, as happens in robust democracies, and so it's important that we're all aware of what we need to do in those situations as well. And it also has workplace alcohol and other drug sub-policy and procedure for councillors. Now, I reckon this policy is probably 2 years too late for our particular council, but I'm very glad that we now have in writing our policy of zero tolerance for using illicit drugs and having blood alcohol above 0.05 around council and when we're on duty. And there's also a clear procedure for Mayor and CEO to deal with any reasonably founded suspicions that a councillor is under the influence of drugs or alcohol, and it sets out for us as councillors what we should do in those circumstances as well. So very glad that we now have this policy in place. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Isaac. Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. I totally agree with this occupational health and safety policy. I think it's the right step for where we are right now, and it's a good it's a good forward process for not only just this council but for future councils as well. So there will be different individuals that might have different needs, that might have to have different sort of care that we need to do, and by being aware that we have an OHS policy, I think is very, very crucial, and it should be a part of our induction when new councillors come on board. Being an old Qantas shop steward, OHS was paramount. Where I worked, it was a very sort of volatile industry, with engines flying around and a lot of heavy materials. But I know we don't have those kind of problems here, but we have other issues that might arise. So I'm more than happy to support this.
Thanks, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Theocarides.
Thank you, Mayor Adams. I will be supporting the officer's recommendation, and in particular I just wanted to note B of the recommendation, in that noting that the Chief Executive Officer, in consultation with Mayor and councillors, may make minor amendments and changes to the policy to reflect contemporary best practices. I like the idea of that because as we learn more about diversity and inclusion, and as, obviously legislative changes we have to make, but in terms of contemporary ways of working with each other and the constant movement in that space, I think this recommendation really highlights the need for that. When I was reviewing the policy, I tend to go into a deep dive and had to think about some other policies that I can bring forward to the table with my fellow councillors in time over the next year or two. But I think that it's an excellent step in the right direction. I think that the model councillor code of conduct is a great sort of basis with which we operate in, and I think once we start looking at these kinds of policies within which that myself and my colleagues work in, I think that it will provide a great framework for not only ourselves but any future councillors. So I'm really excited to see this policy and also future policies as we discuss them and as they come up.
Thank you, Councillor Theocrides. Does anybody else want to speak? Councillor Philburn.
Thank you, Mayor. And I acknowledge the work of officers in getting us and moving us along with the policy and the inputs of councillors. And I certainly support the officers' recommendation. I also think it's one of those documents that says all the right things and puts that really important guidance and expectations and everything in the mix that is an absolute requirement. But I just separate to all of that, what's important to me as well is that we don't lose sight of our actions and how our dealings with each other are not necessarily will always be will sit necessarily neatly in that policy, and certainly how we have our robust discussions, but our respectful dealings with each other and our respectful interactions with staff and the community as well, and just to be mindful that that there's those broader responsibilities that are written in that policy. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Philburn. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be supporting the officer's recommendation. I think that it enhances our governance and ensures that as councillors in the council workplace we are aligning with community expectations. I also don't think it's over-regulation. I think it's fairly practical in terms of the measures that it puts in there without putting too much of a burden on anybody except ourselves to make sure that we are acting in a way that's safe in the workplace and reaching out for the support that we need. And look, I think a duty of care is important. We all need to be safe in the workplace. So I will be supporting the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Samantha Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I'll support it because I think that in the absence of having nothing, this is better than nothing. But I can't necessarily say that I agree. Like, it would have been my preference to necessarily have it exactly how it is. I'm not sure how it will play out. More so, one thing that I was told when we became a councillor is that we are always wearing our councillor hat, and I think that it might be quite tricky to determine when we're acting as a councillor, like if we're having a drink at a local bar, like when are we a councillor, when are we not? There's often grey areas and how this will play out. As I said, I'm going to support it and it'll be interesting to see if it's actually, ideally we don't even really need to use it, let's be honest. But we'll see how it pans out. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Samantha Byrne. Would anybody else like to speak? I think Councillor Barnes, the only person that hasn't spoken yet. No. Councillor Isa, would you like a right of reply?
Oh, thanks, Mayor, for offering a right of reply. I guess I would like to just respond to the comments just made. Just that I think there is recognition in the policy that there's certainly reference to while a councillor is acting in the role of a councillor, and I think there's now been a good body of commentary and and discernment about when a councillor is acting as a councillor and when a councillor is at a social gathering with their friends or their family. I'm reasonably comfortable that that distinction's been well made in a number of different scenarios that have been tested in different situations. There's also, though, if there's a reference there to specifically around the drug and alcohol policy, the policy is to not be over 0.05 when acting as a councillor and needing to perform the role as a councillor, which I think is a reasonable demand on us, and something that I'm not sure what the alternative could possibly be. So, yeah, I don't share the concerns that were raised around there being any misunderstanding about when the policy should or shouldn't apply to us as councillors. If there are particular scenarios maybe that councillors are concerned about, perhaps they could bring those to the next discussion at a strategic briefing, and we could workshop with some advice as to particular situations that councillors may be unclear about. Maybe that might help resolve any uncertainty on that.
Thank you, Councillor Reiser. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. The next report is item 9.6, attendance at ALGA National General Assembly of Local Government. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Jones?
I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cosgrove? Councillor Jones, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, I do think that the ALGA National General Assembly is a great networking opportunity for our councillors and council cohort to advocate for better funding and better policies for our local area from the relevant ministers in Canberra. It'll be an interesting time of year when we go up for the conference this year. Having said that, I think we do need to be mindful of our spending in terms of choice of hotels and flights, and I hope that we take that into consideration when booking flights and accommodation as we head up there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Cosgrove, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. I will just, to add some context, I suppose, that ALGA is a meeting of all 537 councils across Australia have the opportunity to come together in Canberra to discuss national kind of issues affecting local government. It's a great opportunity, as Councillor Jones said, to network with or to meet formally with members of Parliament and to progress our advocacy strategy, and networking with fellow councillors to try and form some collaborative partnerships and hopefully be able to get more done as a bigger group. Yeah, I'll leave it there. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Cosgrove. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Samantha Byrne.
Thanks. For some history on this, we used to have to get a report back every single time. We have to have approval whenever we want to have interstate travel, and because we know this one is coming up, last council term we ensured that it covered the council term, and so now there's a new council term. We've got now going to have a resolution that covers this. It doesn't mean that all 9 councillors are going to Canberra every year. The onus will still be on the individual councillor to decide if they want to go to the conference, and then they can obviously choose what hotel they stay at or whatnot, and they can have some input into that. We could just go back a couple of reports where we did show the quarterly councillor expenses report, and our professional development was next to nothing else. Expenditure's very, very low on this council, and I actually think it's probably too low in the professional development space. And I know that there's the argument to say that we get a councillor allowance, and a councillor allowance, absolutely. But I used to not necessarily be in support of this conference, but if people are using it as a professional development opportunity, I think it's fantastic. If people are using it as a really good, strong advocacy with reason, I think that there can be probably an argument made for that. So I think that everyone is able to make that decision themselves as to whether or not. And if you do go to Canberra, then there is also the onus back on the councillor to come into the council meeting and, you know, talk about what you did and what you achieved or whatnot. So there is that sort of reassurance to the community that people aren't just going up there for the sake of it. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Isa?
Yeah, look, it is a really useful conference to attend, I think, at least once during the council term. There is always the option, and last year I actually went and I paid for myself to go and paid for my accommodation myself. And so if people are worried about that, there is also that option available to people, and then that doesn't necessitate expenditure on behalf of the community or report back. That's an option to people as well if there are concerns.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Councillors, item 10 on the agenda is notices of motion, and we have one listed on the agenda for this evening. I call on Councillor Isa to present her notice of motion, item 10.1, notice of motion number 2025/01, Council Watch.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move that Council resolves to A, submit the following motion to the Municipal Association of Victoria for consideration at the State Council of May 2025 as an issue of significance to local government. 1, call on the MAV to support councils in condemning the personal abuse directed at individuals and misinformation about councils, employees and councillors conveyed regularly online by Council Watch Victoria Incorporated. 2, request the MAV to write to the President of Council Watch Victoria Incorporated, conveying Council's serious concerns about the unreasonable conduct of the organisation, including the publication of misinformation and abusive and threatening material, and the impact of this conduct on individuals in the local government sector. 3, request the MAV to support the Mayor of Moonee Valley and other councils who have written and similarly write to the Victorian Electoral Commission, Minister for Local Government and Minister for Government Services, seeking an investigation into whether Council Watch Victoria Incorporated meets the definition of a third-party campaigner organisation under the Electoral Act 2002 Victoria, and is therefore required to comply with relevant reporting provisions and disclosure laws, and requesting that concerns about Council Watch Victoria Incorporated also be referred to any other relevant integrity, taxation or regulatory agencies to ensure compliance with financial and other laws. 4, request that the MAV make relevant representations, submissions and advocacy to the Electoral Matters Committee and other relevant bodies supporting the implementation of truth in political advertising laws in Victoria. B, request the Mayor of Moonee Valley to write to the Victorian Electoral Commission, Minister for Local Government and Minister for Government Services, seeking an investigation into Council Watch Victoria Inc. per A3 above. And C, authorise the CEO to make any minor changes to improve and or update the motion as necessary and in accordance with advice from the MAV.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cosgrove. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just before I do, can I just make sure, Mayor, that governance has point C?
Oh yes, governance. Could you just scroll down, please?
Perhaps we could just pause while we just get point C. It's in the further information pack.
Thank you. Councillor Arza, is that correct on the screen? Authorise the CEO to make any minor changes to improve and or update the motion as necessary and in accordance with advice from the MAV.
Thanks.
Thanks. Councillor Arza, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. On the 3rd of May 2024, the following was posted on the Council Watch Facebook page. There is a real danger of misinformation or created narratives that community members are easily convinced to believe. Just because it's on a community group, it may not be true. This was written by Council Watch about other community pages on Facebook, and it's clearly something on which we all agree. It's the reason for bringing this motion. Misinformation and created narratives on social media platforms are dangerous. Democracy is only as strong as the information we have, and we all recognise the vulnerability of democracy to distortions of fact. Unfortunately, Council Watch doesn't appear to have followed its own standards and advice, regularly posting unreasonable and unsubstantiated comments on councils, councillors, MPs and organisations. It has reached the point where misinformation and created narratives on Council Watch needs to be called out and called to account. This motion takes these concerns to the Municipal Association of Victoria, the state body, as a matter of significance, as the impact of the alleged misinformation and personal attacks and abuse are far-reaching and extend to councils and councillors across Victoria. The motion also questions whether Council Watch is operating as a third-party campaigner organisation and asks for the MAV to request that this and other compliance matters are investigated as necessary. Turning firstly to the alleged publishing of misinformation, most of the comments published on Council Watch are about councils or councillors. Included are claims that grants processes are pushed for personal agendas, journalists are trying to keep certain councillors happy, that councils and councillors have acted unlawfully, that councils are stealing money, that councillors haven't done training, that councils are responsible for anti-Semitism, that councils have unchecked power, that an individual is a front for an organisation, that journalists are defending Labor councillors, that councils are not following privacy laws, and I've just touched on a small sample. With respect to personal attacks and abuse, I've brought this motion as one of the 20 or so councillors who've been subjected to unreasonable personal attacks and abuse by Council Watch over the past 12 months. We all cop fair criticism as politicians. That is absolutely essential to robust democracy. Personal abuse is when unreasonable, untrue, cruel comments are made that can defame or cause harm to reputations and well-being. Over the past year, Council Watch has published untrue and unreasonable comments about councillors, CEOs, council officers and journalists, including that they are a nasty human, a useless idiot, barely coherent and unable to run a council meeting, spectacularly pathetic, a liar, unfit to chair, a terrible mayor, supportive of $15,000 gifts, the subject of unproven and alleged secret allegations of bullying, abusive, caught out, colluding, it goes on. There's also unreasonable commentary on organisations, mainly councils, but also the VLGA, MAV, Rainbow Labor. There have also been threats, and I specifically refer to some made towards me, but I'm aware of others. Part of the viciousness of the personal attacks are in the comments that are then posted on the page and the lack of moderation of these by the responsible publisher, and I acknowledge the publisher in the gallery here tonight. There are councillors and CEOs who have been hounded far worse than I have. While I'm one of those targeted, this motion is centrally about calling out the damage done to democracy when misinformation and created narratives are peddled without regard to fact. The third part of the motion requests an investigation into the activities of Council Watch to clarify whether the organisation ought to be registered as a third-party campaigner organisation. Many of Council Watch's posts are reposts of the journalism of others, mostly with attribution and credit, sometimes without. Then there's the commentary on council organisations and councillors as described above. Then there are the posts and advertising that move away from commentary and is seemingly campaign activity. Between March and November 2024, Council Watch published calls for candidates, ran councillor candidate training, asked readers to join Council Watch to force change, asked readers to run Council Watch pages, issued media releases, signed people up to do letterboxing, and ran ads promoting some candidates against others. It's not clear whether the threshold for third-party campaigner organisation has been met, but an investigation is warranted. Third-party campaigner organisations are required to disclose donations, These rules are about transparency and honesty in election campaign activities. I agree with Council Watch that there is a real danger of misinformation or creative narratives that community members are easily convinced to believe. This motion asks of Council Watch what it purports to ask of us. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Cosgrove, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. I think of real concern to me and why I thank Councillor Isa for proposing this. Oh, actually, firstly, sorry, in regards to this motion, this is about taking this matter to the MAV State Conference for a delegate to raise a matter at the State Council. It needs to be a council resolution, hence why it's come to us as a notice of motion. The reason I think that's important is, well, everything that Councillor Isa just said, but particularly in regards to the misinformation that comes up on that platform. For example, our last council meeting, it was falsely reported that we were trying to change the names of parks, which was so far from the truth and was alarmist and unconstructive on a really sensitive issue for our community and for First Nations people. And I fully support robust public debate, and public forums are an invaluable place for the community to share information, resources and common concerns, and for us to get feedback from the community. But I have deep concerns when they are peddling misinformation. And I think this platform, Council Watch, does go one step beyond that too, with really vitriolic personal attacks against councillors, and even that's extended to council staff at times, which is just not on. We're all here to do a job. We're open to we're open to criticism. You don't have to agree with us. You can call us out, but the last thing the world needs right now is that kind of, rather in the positive, what the world needs, what we all need, what democracy needs, what our community needs is more respect and tolerance. And I think it's entirely appropriate that this gets raised at the MAV as a matter of concern for councils across Victoria. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. I am going to speak against this motion, not because I condone personal abuse or misinformation, but I feel like this motion is flawed. I feel like it's overreaching and it sets a dangerous precedent for how we as a council engage with criticism and public discourse into the future. I'd also like to take up Councillor Cosgrove's previous point that this is just about submitting a motion to MAV. Point B of the motion does request that the Mayor can participate in the same activities that it's asking the motion to move at MAV. I feel like this is a misuse of public resources. I feel like that this could be perceived as a political attack on a single organisation, Council Watch in this case. Council Watch may publish criticism that some find unfair and misleading. Hell, I don't like everything that Council Watch has to say, but I don't think it's our role as a council nor the MAV's role to single out and condemn individual groups for their freedom of speech. They haven't signed up to a code of conduct in the same way that we have as councillors, and I don't think that this should be our role. I am a supporter of freedom of speech. I think that as a public institution, the council, we are funded by ratepayers, and with that comes scrutiny. Some of it's fair, some of it's not. I feel like in some ways that this motion implies that any criticism, whether accurate or not, will lead to pushback from councils, pushback government. I think that if we as elected councillors start lobbying for investigations that simply say things that we do not like, where is this going to end? And what message does this say to the general public about our willingness to be held accountable? To me, it looks like it's almost a abusive process and trying to seek retaliation. We're not only saying that we condemn what's saying, we're asking for an investigation by multiple bodies, the VEC, the Minister for Local Government, the Minister for Government Service. It even mentions an investigation from tax authorities. It's not within our purview to be able to request tax authorities investigate other organisations, or it definitely shouldn't be. I think it's misplaced priorities for our council and the MAV. Our community's facing rising cost of living, infrastructure pressures. We've got major housing issues in Moonee Valley with the activity centre announcements and looking at our own housing strategy. I don't think that this is the best use of our time and resources. And I also think that this potentially is a dangerous precedent to be setting. If we endorse this motion, it opens the door for future councils, not necessarily just ours, to start targeting other groups or individuals that they don't necessarily like. I think the best way for us to respond if we feel that there's misinformation out there is to publish more facts, publish more information. I don't think that targeting individuals or individual groups is the way to go, so that I will be voting against this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Theocrides.
Yes, I'd just like to I think touch on a couple of points that Councillor Cosgriff mentioned, and after consideration of what Councillor Jones has also mentioned, the council, from what I see and read, and from what Councillor Isa and Councillor Cosgriff have mentioned with regards to personal attacks, with regards to defaming, with regards to going that step beyond what you're expecting as a political candidate and a political person or a politician. And I think I can mention this from campaigning. I assume everyone knows, who's been on my website, on my social media pages, that everyone knows that I am neurodivergent, I'm autistic, and I only tell the truth. I'm transparent and I am upfront with everything that I say. Being a late diagnosed person, it means that I've gone a whole lifetime of trauma and things that don't necessarily, the average person hasn't necessarily gone through in their life. And for me to have gone through my campaign period, or the election campaign, and to look at the toxicity out there in comparison to state and federal elections, where there's, tit for tat, and, you expect that in political campaigning and whatnot. But the level in local government that Council Watch and that other, that happens in forums and in groups is just, and what I felt personally was just toxic. And for someone like myself, who's autistic, who wears my heart on my sleeve, who is a genuine person and genuinely here to do the right thing for our community.
30 seconds.
And not just for our community, but for people, representing minorities across the nation, the things that I do. When I see things like that, if I wasn't as strong as I am right now, it would be quite derailing, to be honest. So I just wanted to add that personal element to the debate. Thank you.
I gave you a 30-second extension there if you need it.
Oh, okay. So I just wanted to say that someone who's not expecting, all that toxicity in local government, and someone who perhaps has gone through a background like mine, or even, you know, more traumatic, and not expecting that, to go up against that, you're dealing with people's mental health, you're dealing with people's lives, and with such toxicity around, we don't need it. We don't need it. We need, just like Councillor Cosrick mentioned, we don't need toxicity. We need genuine, we need openness, we need transparency. And if there is feedback, we have lots of mechanisms in order to feed back. We're not ever going to do, you know, we're not ever going to please everyone. And we are open to feedback, but not toxicity. Thank you.
Councillor Theocrides. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Sypek?
Thank you, Mayor. You should have been here in the old days when we had reporters sitting in the corner there just watching us and reporting what you want to do. And the difference is, when they reported, regardless of what they wrote, it was in the local paper, and the local paper hit every single home, and everyone read it. Social media, I don't think, gets 100% input into every single house. Even, you know, elderly people from, you know, ethnic backgrounds would read it, look at the photos and all that. So what we had back then is we had a department, a communications department, that would ring the editor, make comments, you know, like, and try and sort it out in the following week. But for a week it was out there. Today in social media, you can respond to anything virtually instantaneously. And that's the beauty of social media, to respond. But I do agree with my colleague here, Councillor Jones, that this is a choice between freedom of speech or to try and shut someone down. But I just want to say, there's a great saying by Lord Armourist, and he said, there's 3 ways to lose money. The first, gambling is the fastest. Entertainment, the most enjoyable, and talking and reporting, most definite. And I feel with Councillor Jones that I think we are using resources for something that a reasonable person would look at this and say, how does this benefit every person in the community? I don't know. You know, like, if it's something, you know, comments made about council or individuals, you can respond to it. It's that simple. But all I want to say is, if a public figure picks a fight with a media entity, it's basically like going to war. But the only difference is, and this is what I was told when I first started, the only difference between that is when you go to war, you only die once. In the media, there's multiple times. And I always think about that. I always think about making a phone call, try and, you know, resolve it, not escalate it. And I think we're escalating it here, and I just can't support it.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Barnes?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councillor Jones with the freedom of speech. Media is a double-edged sword. If anyone in this room can probably vouch for media living it and breathing it and being put on a stake and burned, it would be myself. I had a boss that I showed a letter to one day. It was a hate letter, and it was quite concerning. So I went and sought him for some advice. And he read it, and he sort of had a smile on his face, and then he pulled out a box from underneath his desk, and I would have guessed it had 5,000 to 6,000 letters in it. And he said, put your hand in here and just read one of those. So I read one, and it was 10 times worse than what mine was. And he said, listen, mate, don't believe in everything that you read. And it taught me to get on with it and just get back to work. And as Councillor Sypek said, let's just focus on council issues and get the job done for our constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Samantha Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Isa, for voicing your opinion, and Councillor Jones for voicing your opinion, Councillor Cosgrove, Councillor Jones, Councillor Theocrates, just about everyone has voiced their opinion. And thank you for voicing your opinions on other debates that we've had tonight. I think everyone should have the right to voice their opinion, including people on social media that aren't necessarily sitting around this chamber. I don't believe in censorship. I think that freedom of speech is something that is incredibly important, and I think that the more opinions that you hear, especially us as local representatives, the better we'll become. I think we have to really draw a line between what is an opinion and what is actually a fact. And from what I've seen on Council Watch, there is a lot of opinion. There is a lot of repeated articles, and sure, there are some facts that are put in there as well. When we speak about misinformation, I would actually question whether this is the way to combat misinformation, because what I think would probably be the first step, or at least an early step, or the first time that this group of councillors has discussed misinformation. I would say that what would have been a much probably more productive move, if there had have been an issue, and if it had have been something that we had have discussed as a group, or perhaps with you, Mayor, could have done what the City of Melbourne Mayor recently did, according to the Council Watch page, which was actually sit down and have a conversation. Now, I don't know why that conversation came about. I don't know the results of it or whatnot, but I don't know if there was something wrong. And there has been things that have been wrong about me printed in media or on social media before. You can either ignore it, you can respond directly to it, or you can, contact the person who made a mistake and try to fix it. Now, in terms of what was with the parks, I did read it, and I would have to go back and see the actual where it landed, the actual misinformation, but I thought that a lot of it was opinion-based. Now, I could be wrong, I don't have it in front of me right now, but I think we have to be very careful with telling people we don't want to hear their opinions, because they might be maybe a bit more on the toxic side than what we can tolerate. Because if we want to go down that path, I think that is an incredibly slippery slope, and I don't think it's where we need to go as Moonee Valley Council. I do want to raise that on Tuesday the 8th of August 2023...
Sorry, Councillor Byrne, your time is up. Would you like an extra 30 seconds?
I would, thank you. On Tuesday the 8th of August 2023, there was a motion that came into this chamber, which Councillor Isa, you raised as well, and it was all about misinformation, but the whole key part of the debate was that it was anonymous misinformation, and you said that was the major issue, and Mayor, you agreed with that as well. There was a Senate inquiry into...
Please don't draw the chair into debate, thank you.
Okay. There was people that were involved. Anyway, I think we have to be very careful with what we do here, and going to the MAV without actually speaking about it as a group is, in one of the first notices of motion since we've had in the last 12 months when we've had the monitors here, is also not a really good way to do it. And
thank you, Councillor Byrne.
I will finish there.
Councillor Phil Byrne, would you like to speak?
I guess I might as well say a few words as well. Thank you, Mayor. I certainly support the right, and not just the right, but the role of free speech. I certainly support the right for really strong advocacy on issues, advocacy for ideas, advocacy for values, and also advocacy for ideologies as well. I also support transparency and accountability for certainly all of our actions and decisions and everything that we do. That said, though, you can certainly do that without personal abuse, and you can certainly do this by ensuring that contributors to your own carriage network don't engage in personal abuse as well. And And I guess you can advocate, you certainly can advocate, and you can push for your points, you can push for your criticisms. But where I have an issue is trying to pretend that you're something that you're actually not, like pretending that you're an independent arbiter of Victoria's 79 councils, and the 700 plus odd councillors and however many CEOs and executive and staff and everything else. And with regards to misinformation or disinformation, it's the internet, I get that. I get that things are cherry-picked, amplified, balance and objectivity are removed from time to time in social media and so forth. Not even social media, any old media. But then again, don't pretend that you're something that you're not. And when this motion was put, my first point was I'd prefer to be looking at motions which advance what we all want to advance for Moonee Valley. And jumping on and having a look at this side, it was that Parks motion that jumped straight out at me, to be honest. And I think, how on earth can you get something so wrong when these proceedings are filmed and minuted? I just couldn't believe it. So that wasn't misinformation, that was disinformation. Is that okay by itself? A bit of a big whoop, but then you look at the pylon. Will someone stop her? You know, capitals and all of this sort of stuff. And to the heart of this motion, I'm not the whole motion. I know that we're asking the Mayor to do things and other things here, but it's really to ask the VEC to consider whether this is whether there's any obligations for this entity under the Electoral Act, and whether some of those reporting and disclosure and accountability things that...
Councillor Phil Byrne, another 30 seconds.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Some of the things that apply to other sort of entities also apply. So I don't agree with points around resourcing. I think it's about getting the appropriate bodies to do their job, to be honest. It would certainly use a lot more resources for us to go and correct everything that's up there. And I'd ask my colleagues to look at some of these comments and really have a think about if that's appropriate. And if you feel that it is appropriate, then and if that's a standard that you're happy with, then I'm a bit concerned. So in closing, Mayor, there's plenty wrong with disinformation, there's plenty wrong with personal abuses, and I see absolutely nothing wrong with some increased transparency, some accountability and some respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Phil Byrne. Councillor Isel, would you like a right of reply?
Thanks, Mayor. I agree, Councillor Jones, that it's not a good use of time, but nor is it a good use of time to wake up each morning during an election campaign and check which people you need to block from your social media account because there's been abuse that's been generated by a post of misinformation and personal abuse. I am not the only councillor who is subjected to this, nor the only councillor who's ever been subjected to criticism from media. Councillor Sypex spoke about all forms of media criticising people. This motion isn't brought on behalf of myself, and it's not retaliatory as was suggested by Councillor Jones. This motion is on behalf of about 20 to 30 councils who have been subjected to misinformation and about 20 to 30 councillors who have been subjected to personal abuse and attacks on this site. There are codes of conduct that apply to journalism. There are codes of ethics, there are standards. There's no indication that any of these standards, there is an attempt to meet these standards. The motion puts forward the code of conduct that applies to organisations that engage in campaign activities. That's the point of the motion. So it is asking this organisation to comply with the codes of conduct that are relevant to these activities. There are different ways of dealing with misinformation, that's right, but the publisher of this site knows that I have tried...
Seconds left.
Oh, may I have an extension, please, Mayor?
Sure.
That the publisher knows that I have tried to contact them to have information corrected and that this hasn't been successful. That statements from CEOs have been published to try to correct misinformation and that hasn't been successful. We have talked about misinformation previously, and it is taking it to the MAV and looking for some investigations. That is the point of which we have reached. Of course, freedom of speech and censorship were going to be mentioned tonight. What this sort of publication does is, in fact, have a chilling effect on speech. It stops councillors from having opinions and putting forward things that might not comply or might not conform with the views of a site that is going to then launch an attack on them. A week ago, a comment was published about me that was just completely untrue. There was no recourse for me to take. The only recourse for councillors and organisations is to seek some a collaborative and more weighty. So I've lost track of
Councillor Isa, your time is up.
Okay, can I just finish my sentence, please, Mayor? I'm sorry that the clock. The clock's not in my line of sight. It's quite tricky.
Okay, finish your sentence.
I'll just make the final point, which is we've reached the point where we need to deal with this at a collaborative and joint level that has more weight, because this issue has become so serious for the dignity of local government and the dignity of personal councillors in the sector.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. I'll now put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's Councillor Phil Byrne, Councillor Cosgrove, Councillor Rose Isa, Councillor Theocrides, Councillor Adams. Those against? Councillor Barnes, Councillor Samantha Byrne, Councillor Jones, Councillor Sypek. I declare that motion carried. We're now on to item 11, urgent business. Councillors, do we have any urgent business? If not, we will move on to item 12, confidential reports. We have one confidential report listed on the agenda this evening. The motion to close the meeting to the public pursuant to section 66 2 of the Local Government Act 2020 to consider the confidential item 12.1 2020